Hi guys, welcome to another episode of U.S. History with Lennox, and today the world is at war. In our last video, we saw the causes leading up to the start of World War I being sparked by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. His death in Sarajevo is going to spark a system of alliances coming together that ends with the countries of Europe at war. America is still not involved, and we're still trying to stay out of it, but we're slowly going to be pulled in, and that's what we're going to look at in this video. So come on, we're going to war. So the big question you might have now is, what does the United States have to do with this war being fought over all these alliances in Europe at this point? And to that I say quite a bit. The biggest thing we faced in America at the start of World War I was divided loyalties. Our population was divided, some supporting the allies of England, France, and Russia, while others supporting the Central Powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Italy. Those who supported the Allies were typically native-born Americans, Russian immigrants, and Greek immigrants as well. But you also had those who supported the Central Powers. That would be German and Austrian immigrants. Makes sense. So we're treading on dangerous ground here. If we get involved in this war, that war could come home to America, and that's the last thing we want. And neutrality has worked for us for so long. George Washington told us, don't get involved in foreign entanglements. It's not a good idea. And so that's what Wilson is going to try to do from the very beginning. Just stay out of it. Just stay neutral. But because of those loyalties, because Americans had friends and families who were fighting in the war, they believed that we should be over there as well, that we should pick a side and get involved. So how did we get involved when you have a president who's pushing for neutrality and yet a people who's pushing for involvement? Well, it's going to take some pretty big provocations to get us over there. The provocations that are going to lead the United States to get involved in World War I are going to include a cruise ship, a telegram, and a whole bunch of German submarines. So let's talk about each one of these. Germany had created a fleet of U-boats or submarines, and they were patrolling the Atlantic Ocean, stopping any vessels they believed would be a threat to their war efforts, specifically British ships. One of those ships is going to be the Lusitania, a cruise ship carrying nearly 1,200 passengers. 1,198 people will die, including 128 Americans, when a German U-boat torpedoes the Lusitania. Now, Germans are going to claim that there were munitions being carried aboard this ship, although no one has ever admitted to that at all. To this day, the British government claims there were no munitions on this ship. Regardless, the ship was sunk and Americans were killed, and this is going to anger many people in America, and this is going to lead them to push us to go into the war. But we're not quite ready yet. You see, the German embassy had warned that these U-boat operations were taking place in the Atlantic. So if you got on a cruise ship to head towards Europe, you're taking your life in your own hands. And what's going to happen when you go into a war zone? You might run into war. But tensions still mounted with Germany, because it wasn't just the Lusitania that was sunk. They started shooting on American vessels, believing that we were taking weapons over to Great Britain and to the Allies. We did reach a temporary agreement with Germany called the Sussex Pledge in 1916, where they promised not to torpedo any passenger ships. But they're still going to practice unrestricted submarine warfare on other types of vessels. And America's not too happy, because it's going to be American vessels that are going to start being sunk by these German U-boats. But we're still not quite ready to go to war. Wilson was very hesitant because he had seen the effects of the war. He had grown up in the South after the Civil War and saw the wreckage and the ruin that came from war. And the last thing he wanted to do was take America into yet another war. So he was very hesitant to have any inclination to call for war. In fact, he's going to use that as a campaign slogan in 1916 when he runs for re-election. His slogan is, "He kept us out of the war." He went about America telling parents, "I've kept your boys out of this war. They're still alive because they're here and not over there." The complexity of the war is going to change, though, in 1917 when the Russian Revolution breaks out. In the revolution, Bolsheviks led by Vladimir Lenin are going to overthrow the Tsarist regime of Russia. And they're going to sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1917. And what this essentially did was ceased all hostilities between Russia and the Central Powers. Now Germany, no longer fighting a two-front war, can leave the Eastern Front and focus all their power and all their military forces on the Western Front and England and France. But America's still not ready to enter the war. That is, until that telegram I told you about. It's known as the Zimmerman Note or the Zimmerman Telegram, and it was a communique between Germany and Mexico. In this communique, basically Germany is trying to get Mexico's support to keep America out of the war, because Germany's no fool. They know that America is getting closer and closer to joining this war, which will just be one more country that they will have to face. And it basically said this: we intend to start unrestricted submarine warfare once again, and we're hoping that America stays neutral. But just in case she doesn't, we would like to form an alliance with Mexico. And through this alliance, we can make war together and make peace together. We want Mexico to take on America in a war. We'll back you up, but we want you to keep them over in your neck of the woods. And then once we win your reward, we're going to give you back Texas, we're going to give you back New Mexico, and Arizona. And you guys can come up with any other details that you want. Isn't that nice? Fortunately for us, the British government intercepted this telegram and shared it with us. Well, this is pretty much all we need. The provocations have stacked up enough where it's time that we get involved. Remember, it was a cruise ship, a telegram, and the submarines. These are the reasons that Woodrow Wilson will use when he goes and asks Congress for a declaration of war. So in April of 1917, that's exactly what he does. And he says the main cause, the direct cause, is that unrestricted submarine warfare. We are not being afforded the freedom of the seas that's typically guaranteed to a neutral nation. And he goes, and on top of that, we have a mission. We have to go in there and make the world safe for democracy. This ties right into Woodrow Wilson's foreign policy of moral or missionary diplomacy. So America's going to war, but we have to fight the war here as well, because remember, we have those divided loyalties. So in 1917, Congress is also going to pass the Espionage Act to protect American interests here at home. The Espionage Act is going to prohibit interference with any military operations, as well as obstruction of recruitment and enlistment. Add to that the Sedition Act of 1918, which made it illegal for anyone to use disloyal, profane, scurrilous, or abusive language about the United States, the flag, its institutions, and the military. Now you might be sitting there saying, hey, hold on. What about our freedom of speech? Well, in an upcoming Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court is going to say that the United States had that authority to do that to protect national interest. Remember, we were a country of immigrants at this time, and though all Americans are expected to be loyal to our cause, we were still split. I already mentioned the split between native-born Americans and Russian immigrants with German immigrants and Austrian immigrants and stuff like that, but we had others as well. Irish Americans were against Great Britain. They wanted nothing to do with Great Britain. And then you had the German Americans still loyal to their homeland. Propaganda and hysteria are going to run rampant in America when we first go to war. Germany is not only seen as the enemy abroad, but the enemy within. German books, German music are going to be banned in our country. We're going to stop playing Beethoven and Mozart and Brahms. German Americans are going to be targeted with hate and lynching because they're seen as the enemy. Heck, we're even going to change the name of some of our favorite foods. Hamburgers are going to start being called Liberty sandwiches, and sauerkraut's going to be called Liberty cabbage. We're going a little crazy. But regardless, grab your mask because we're going to war over there. In our next video, we're not only going to look at life over there, but we're going to look at life here on the home front as well. And America's involvement in World War I was not just a military exercise. It was an exercise of the entire population of America. If you missed anything, feel free to go back and watch it again. Otherwise, we're going to see you on the next one, World War I on the home front. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.